Okay, we are live. Hello, everybody. I am Chastity White Rose, and I'm here with a first-time special guest, Josh Brahm of Equal Rights Institute. And I wanted to talk to Josh for a long time because I used to listen to you, Josh, with the what was the Right to Life of Central California
Mhm.
Life Report. Yeah,
Life
Life
report,
Report. I
yeah.
listened like there was I don't know 300 episodes. I listened to them all or something. And I was always struck with how you spoke to a variety of people. You were always willing to take on a challenge and talk to new types of people. And it particularly caught my attention. The reason I found that podcast is because had episodes where you were talking to pro-life atheists,
Yes.
which is such a cool thing because I have been so upset. Do you have any idea how many times people have called me some Bible thumping Christian or some Catholic or whatever? People have called me
Mm.
all kinds of things that are not true, and we got to break the stereotypes,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
And so I feel like you're a person who understands that very well. You have a lot of experience talking about the issue of abortion as well as other things too. And so I would like you to introduce a little bit of yourself as well. But first, we should go over the rules of Stream Club.
Let's do
This
it.
is this is the thing I do. Okay, so the first rule of Stream Club is you can talk about anything in Stream Club. The second rule of Stream Club is you must ask questions.
Nice.
The third rule of Stream Club is you have to trust Chastity, which is me. The fourth rule of Stream Club is be excellent to each other.
I love it. I love
The
that.
fifth rule of Stream Club is party on, dudes. And the sixth rule of Stream Club is don't move to Canada.
Oh, that one's just
That's
mean.
my roommate on this one. she moved to Canada and she doesn't recommend it. So I give her credit for rule 6. You never know. She's in the closet, but she's literally in my closet. She's my roommate. So you never know. She might pop out at the most unexpected time. You just never know.
It'll
But
keep me
yeah,
on my
so
toes.
we're gonna have a good time, Josh. So how about you tell the world a little bit about yourself and your history to briefly sum up?
Sure. And just thank you. It's just so good to be on with you. I've really enjoyed watching your comments on our page or our YouTube and kind of our emails back and forth. You've just been so sweet and encouraging. It's just really great to finally kind of get to know you better doing this in front of an audience, who knows. But yeah, so I've been working in the pro-life movement since I was about 18 years old, which makes me kind of odd, but I kind of knew that I wanted to do that when I was 11. It was kind of the sort of music career. I was very tempted to go into professional music. I've been sent a contract from Nashville to go and be a full-time musician, and I kind of realized I couldn't do both. I kind of had to pick between that and full-time pro-life work. And there's a lot of really great musicians out there, and there's not a lot of great young pro-life speaker people. And so I threw away the contract, and I worked at a couple of different organizations, but 7 years ago now, in fact, this is almost, I think, the ERI anniversary, if I remember right. But about 7 years ago, we launched Equal Rights Institute because I wanted to help pro-life people to be less weird, and kind of try to help pro-lifers make better arguments, because there's a lot of pro-life arguments, and some of them are good and some of them are terrible. And some of them are like logically valid, but they're not very persuasive to pro-choice people, because pro-choice people tend to think differently than pro-life people do. So I'm really interested in the psychology of persuasion. And we kind of stumbled upon an argument that worked way better than anything we'd ever used before, that we called the equal rights argument. And so we started Equal Rights Institute partly to teach that argument, but also what I really care about is helping pro-life people to be more loving. And when I look around at the way that we talk about pro-choice people behind their back, and sometimes, frankly, to their face, it makes me really mad. It's like really upsets me. It's like, this is not the way that it ought to be. And of course, civil discourse is at like an all-time low right now, when we can't even talk to each other about anything. We can't even talk to each other about masks, for goodness sake, much less abortion or transgenderism or whatever.
I know, math is racist now.
Oh my goodness! Like, it's like, what is going on? Like, it's like, so regardless of the topic right now, it feels like people can't talk to each other if they disagree even a little bit. It just kind of everything blows up. And so I feel like there's never been a better time for there to be people like me trying to change that conversation. In this case, we're kind of almost always focused on abortion, even though I care about other topics too, and I'm kind of always thinking about things. But I want to help, and kind of just feeding back on what you were saying. I think it is so important for there to be more diversity in the pro-life movement. The pro-life movement has been stereotypically been a very white, middle-aged Catholic thing for a long time. And I know it wasn't purely that, although like certainly like even Protestants weren't even really in the fight for the most part for the first 10 or 15 years of this thing. So Catholics did beat us on that. But it's like, I don't like everyone kind of expects that pro-lifers are all religious. And that's not helpful on multiple levels. I mean, certainly my friends, I love all the people who work as secular pro-life. Really good relationship with them. And I think they're one of the most important.
I even wrote an article for them.
Oh, nice. Oh, excellent. That's really good.
Have you ever seen the article, Abortion Prevention, Don't Forget the Men? I wrote that. Chelsea Hazard, edited it a little bit, but I wrote the original.
That's great. No, they're so important because people need to understand, especially if we want to change minds for those on the secular side of things, they need to understand that you don't have to become a Christian first to become pro-life, or else a lot of them are just not going to become pro-life because they've got other reasons that they've rejected Christianity, whether it's people being a bunch of hypocrites or the certain things about theology just seem confusing or off-putting even to them or whatever. And I want them to be able to at least become pro-life and see that it shouldn't be legal to electively kill babies in the womb. And I don't think they have to become a Christian to do that. Now, obviously, generally speaking, I want people to have true beliefs about everything. I think all of those issues are important. And so, teaching people about being open-minded is kind of a big part of this too, which is kind of swimming against the stream for both sides. But yeah, so anyway, I am all about diversity in the pro-life movement. We need more atheists. We need more gay people. We need more transgender people. We need like everyone part of this, part of one collective group working together. And hopefully, as we move forward in a way that is more loving, more inclusive, more gracious, and our conversations are just better, and that we're making better arguments. I care about that too.
Yeah, see, because I've been pro-life my whole life, basically, but I never really knew of the abortion was happening when I was younger. Like it was something wasn't something I knew, and it was something. So only in my adult life later, I started getting these political ads that were against Todd Aiken. I'm sure you've heard of Todd Aiken.
Oh yeah,
and they're like, Todd Aiken won't give women a choice and all this stuff. And I had to figure out what the hell they were even talking about.
Right.
So I went and looked up, Todd Aiken on Google, and I found all this stuff. And, and I agree with his central thing that, you can punish the rapist, but why attack the child? And what I've seen over and over again happen is that you have people who bring up the topic of rape. It's like, and they make you out to sound like you're a bad person if you don't let rape victims who get pregnant abort their children. And like, I'm not the first to have said this, but I've said before that, abortion is a rapist's best friend. It really is. Because that child serves as DNA evidence of who the father is permanently, if they're allowed to live. So, of course, a rapist who goes and rapes women is going to be for abortion, is going to want abortion to be legal so that the evidence is removed of what they're doing. And so there's so many aspects to consider, but there's also the fact that most abortions are not the result of rape. The majority of abortions is, of course, people, getting pregnant without, having sex and getting pregnant without thinking about the consequences. They haven't discussed it because, people, they do things. They get drunk and then they have sex and they don't even remember what they did. And so we live in a world where people are not conscious of their actions. They're not conscious of, cause and effect and what causes what and what they're actually doing. And so I think the large majority of abortions happen because of a culture that has become worse since abortion was legalized. Because like if you go back a long time ago, I mean, sure, things were messed up. Racism was higher, and there was more violence against gay people and stuff like that. But if you go back a long time, people had a more conservative idea about sex and that it should be within marriage and stuff. And I think that was actually a positive thing, and then I hear that stuff happened in the 1960s, sexual revolution and all this stuff. I wasn't born yet back then. But then things started changing where, casual sex became increasingly common. And then when abortion was legalized, it permanently changed like the mindset of people. Because then all of a sudden people are like, well, if I get pregnant from my lifestyle, then I'll just go for abortion. And so it's to cause people to just think abortion was no big thing. And when something's legal, it also in some people's minds sends the message that it's immoral.
Correct.
Yeah. And we know that moral and legal are not the same thing. We're agreed on that point.
Right.
And my role, I feel, is to keep the conversation happening, because you have to understand, I have basically no pro-life support. Like my friends, even my closest friends generally are going to be, atheist, pantheist, agnostic, and they're all pro-choice, I'm pretty sure. Like all the people I relate to. And also as a vegan, because I'm an ethical vegan and I don't believe in killing animals. So vegan since 2013. And so it's, for me, that's simple. It's very simple, because I just don't buy any products that I know are obtained through animal slaughter and stuff like that. But the problem with vegans, and you're probably aware of this too, because you're a smart guy, a lot of vegans are terribly misanthropic. They're like really hate humans really, really bad. And so there's a lot of vegans. In fact, the majority of them that I've come across, they're like, well, we should abort all the humans because fewer humans means fewer humans that can harm animals. And while their reasoning is logically sound, I cannot go with that. I'm like the one ethical vegan person. Well, I'm sure there are others too. There's a few others who are like me, but I'm one of the very, very few. It's like, wait, I went vegan. I've committed to nonviolence. So I'd be a hypocrite then to go and justify killing babies in the womb, especially because they're innocent. And the way I feel is that it's actually better to like kill an adult human that's a criminal and causing harm than to kill some innocent baby that hasn't actually done anything wrong. And so it's against all standards of justice when babies are aborted, and another thing is most pro-lifers are reasonable in the sense that, of course, they believe in exceptions if the mother's life is in danger.
Basically all of them.
Like there might be someone pregnant who's also has cancer, and chemotherapy could result in the loss of the baby. So of course we understand that, but the conversation is just mad because I don't have support in my pro-life beliefs, and I don't require it either because I know who I am and what I believe. But like I said, I want to keep the conversation open, because if people like you and people like me don't speak up and we just let the majority rule, because the culture has by and large just accepted, everything Planned Parenthood throws at them. They just believe everything, they just believe that, abortion is feminism, a woman's right to choose. And that if you're pro-life, then you're some kind of misogynist. Like I have been called that so many times.
Me too.
I am sick of it. And it also strikes me very, very weird because I have done nothing wrong. I mean, first of all, I'm a virgin. Okay. Like I have not contributed to a pregnancy. Like that's one of those things where originally it was because of the abortion issue. I thought, if you don't want to have children, then you just don't have sex. That's worked for me, but apparently other people don't agree. And I understand that not everybody is like me, but for me, that's simple. I mean, besides, I'm weird. Nobody wants to have sex with me anyway. But there's that issue. And being transgender too, it really just cuts my heart when people say that I was born, because I was born biologically male, then, well, men have no say in the abortion thing. I'm sure you're familiar with that. Like, you're a man, therefore your opinion is invalid.
Basically, every conversation I have with a pro-choice person, that's going to come up at some point.
Yeah, I know that. And I'll tell you, that's a huge part of the reason I wish I had been born female, just so that wouldn't be able to be used against me. That's just sick, because when they do that, they're making the same mistake as men have done when they mistreat women. How come sexism against women is vilified, as it should be, but then sexism against men is praised?
Yeah,
it's like, then people are like, oh yeah, men are just so bad and evil, and it's horrible to be stereotyped like that when you've done absolutely nothing wrong.
Yeah, I definitely agree with, like, it is really hard, and I know that you've experienced this, Chastity, where you're being discriminated against because of just like the attributes that you have or whatever. In this case, we're talking about like the idea of like men can't talk about this or whatever. And I do agree that there's a version of that argument that is sexist. So I'm not disputing that. I think, but there's a thing that we like to do at ERI where it's like, what is the strongest version of this argument? And talk about that. So I like how Sam Harris, one of my favorite atheists, will talk about, instead of straw manning, steel manning, right? I really enjoy Sam Harris. I don't agree with everything that he says, but he's a good thinker. He's thoughtful, and I feel like he's pretty respectful and charitable, at least sometimes. And so the steel man version, I think, of the "you're a man" thing is something like, in fact, it's kind of comparable to something that I've heard conservative parents say sometimes, ironically, because I'll hear parents say, you don't get to have an opinion about spanking until you have kids. And it's the same bad argument, because what's going on there, it's not exactly the fact that I'm male. It's the idea that I can't understand pregnancy, not really, or childbirth, or motherhood, and the shame, like, from culture or friends from being pregnant out of wedlock, even now in 2021, these ideas. And then they would say, to really understand the abortion issue, you need to have a certain level of experiential knowledge about that, or else you just can't get it. Just like parents saying you can't really understand about spanking until you've had kids and you've wanted to spank them, basically. I think is basically the view. And I think both are wrong. I think that I can understand enough to be able to, like, for my philosophical beliefs to be valid. But so the thought experiment that we use, that we found to be more effective, is to, when a pro-choice person says you're a man, you can't talk about this, is to kind of respond to that toughest version and say, okay, I'm tracking with you. You're right. Common ground. I am a man, and I can never really understand pregnancy. So go with me here. Imagine I am hanging out at a lake. I'm just enjoying the view, and I look down and I see something weird. I see a woman pushing her car into the lake. And I look closer. I'm like, this is pretty strange, right? And I look closer, and there's a baby in the back seat. So what's going on is this woman is going through major postpartum depression. Something that I, as a man, can never really fully understand, right? Like, I can have sympathy. I have friends who've gone through that, and I hate it. I don't want that, but I can't really understand it at an experiential level. So that will affect my attitude toward her. I'm not going to have this judgy, ew, I don't like what she's doing. I'm so much better than her. I'm not going to have that kind of attitude. I'm going to be like, what is going on for this poor person? How can I help this person? Like, what help does she need to get her, like, where feels like the best option for her? She must be really hurting. But I'm still also going to get in the water and try to help the kid, right? I want to help them both. And that seems reasonable, even though I'm a man that can't understand postpartum depression. Yeah. And so by making that comparison to this other thing that I, as a man, can't understand, we've seen a lot of, like, very angry feminists even kind of back down, be like, all right, that's fair. what's your argument against abortion? It doesn't work every time. There's no silver bullet ever, but that has worked pretty well. And I like that idea of trying to steel man pro-choice arguments.
Yeah, I know. There's so many weird examples of things. Like, for example, I don't drink alcohol. I never have. So it's almost like saying, well, because I've never gotten drunk and got a DUI or done something stupid while drunk, that I can have no opinion about the things that people do while drunk. That's weird. Like, what?
Yeah. Yeah. That's an odd view. There's another thing you said earlier that I don't know if it's worth going deeper into this, but might be. But it's a tangent you can choose to pull on if you want to. But you said something that again, I've certainly heard a lot of pro-life people say, was just kind of like talking about, like, you know, you didn't say it like this, but it's like the good old days when people kind of had more conservative views about sex. You didn't have as much of like this kind of unplanned pregnancy problem that would lead to potential abortions, or you know, maybe had fewer sexually transmitted infections, things like that. And there is, I think, some truth to that. Like, for sure, the abortion issue would be less of an issue if people had less premarital sex. It would still be an issue because they're like, in fact, what's interesting about when the Alan Guttmacher Institute has tracked why women have abortions, they've tracked this multiple times where they're like doing a ton of surveys asking exactly why they're having an abortion. And there's also like a select all, check all the boxes that apply at all. And so that, like, that's where you get the statistic that only, you know, it's actually less than 1% of abortions happen because women were raped or survivors of incest. But one of the interesting things that a lot of people have not noticed about the fact they've done that study twice and kind of put both years on a table next to each other is the only reason women get abortions that's really changed significantly is more and more now women who are spouses, who are already married, are choosing to have abortions. And they're having abortions because they feel like they already have enough kids, kind of a thing. Like, so it's kind of like the one thing that's changed. So certainly there are married women having abortions. There are a lot of them. But I also kind of want to say, like, something I've been thinking about a lot lately is it is also possible to have too rosy of a view of the good old days, because one of the things, and I wish I could remember her name right now. I'll look it up once you start talking again, because I kind of want to give her a shout out because she's done so much important work. But there's a woman, really awesome blogger and podcaster, who has been kind of exposing a lot of the really messed up views about sex that have been in the Christian world really for a long time now. Like a lot of the most popular marriage books that have been promoted by like groups like Focus on the Family have really messed up stuff in them, like really
I know what you're
problematic
talking
things.
about. I've read those books. My mom has them.
So, and a lot of times, like, we don't even, I'm like, I've read some, I had my wife read some of these books. Like, I'm like feeling terrible. It's kind of like now there's kind of this kind of like, opening, like, what are even like bad ideas that maybe got ingrained in us somewhere at a deep level that has affected things. And like, there's a lot of people talking about how it has really harmed their lives. And so I want to say, like, I feel like now finally some people are starting to get like better views about sex, at least talking about it in public, ways that, you know, treat women much better, that are much more of kind of an equitable situation, areas that focus on pleasure more than a lot of times books did in the past. Anyway, there's just like a lot of like, when I think about like, well, at least 100 years ago, we had more conservative views about sex. I'm like, yeah, but there's not a great time to be a wife in a lot of these marriages too. And so anyway,
I totally agree. I get what you're saying. See, here's the thing is, of course, all kinds of messed up things happen in marriages. And it's unfortunate because we have this, okay, on the one hand, you know, growing up in Christian churches, you know, there's this whole idea that, well, the people are at least being taught that sex is something that should only happen within marriage. Right. So what do you think happens as a result? Well, then people think, well, I really want to have sex. So then they get legally married and they have the piece of paper so they're legally married. But is that a marriage? I say no, because they've got, you know, the cart before the horse, as they say. They've got things out of order because they think that they're doing it for the wrong reason. Because instead of they're actually in a relationship with someone, they actually love them, they actually know this person, they've talked and agreed about what they're going to do. Instead, it's like, oh, well, I want to have sex and I want my Christian family to get off my back for it, so I'll just marry this person. and then have sex with them. And so what happened is Christians and these teachings that have actually caused harm in that sense, because then you have all these people married who don't want to be married and still have the same problems that they would have had they not been married. It's just that now they're seen as married, so society thinks the problem has gone away, but it hasn't.
Right.
And it's very messed up. And then similarly, I named myself Chastity White Rose. I call myself the vegan virgin. Celibacy is my thing. I mean, when you're a 34-year-old virgin, it's like I'm just going until I die. That's how I am. But here's the thing. Another thing I don't like, this may surprise you, is I don't like celibacy being forced on people.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? Like this
Agreed.
idea, like for example, Catholic priests and nuns have to be celibate, or all these church people telling people not to have sex before marriage, because what happens is then people are told this, and then they rebel for one thing. They rebel for one thing and go against it anyway. But doing something because it's what you want and what you believe is not the same as doing it just because you were told to do it.
Sure. Yeah. At some point, this has to become like not your parents' morality or your church's morality or your priest or whatever, but like, what is your view? What do you actually think is better? I can make an argument for saving sex from marriage that is not religious and is pragmatic and safer, but at the same time, I certainly wouldn't force it on someone. I wouldn't want it to be a law, like, is illegal to have sex outside of marriage, or is illegal to have certain kinds of sex. Like, no, I don't want things to be like that. Just in case anyone's interested, by the way, in that blogger I mentioned, I had to look her up. So her blog is To Love, Honor, and Vacuum. She just wrote a book called The Great Sex Rescue that's talking about like a lot of those messed up beliefs in like popular Christian books about sex. I've bought it. I haven't read it yet though. And so her podcast is called Bare Marriage. It is a really good podcast. Cool. And so far, I've basically agreed with everything Sia said. But to be fair, I haven't read and heard everything. But it's what she's doing is so important, especially for Christians who have been kind of indoctrinated into believing certain things that are problematic about sex, and they didn't even know they were that they were problematic beliefs.
Yeah, it's very interesting because, like, even if there's something that I agree with the message, when it's indoctrinated into people, if people are forced into it, it's a whole different matter. Like, for example, veganism. I love to use veganism as an example. Like, let's say you're a child and you're raised by vegan parents. Most of us are not, so this is exceptionally rare.
Sure.
But let's say you're raised by vegan parents. Well, I think that's great. Of course, if I did have kids, I would raise them to be vegan. I would teach them to be kind to animals and not to buy products or murder animals in other ways, stuff like that. But when that child grows up, if they were only vegan because it was what their parents taught them, then they have the choice to do whatever when they're an adult. And that's the thing, is that a parent can teach kids their values, whatever their religion may be, whatever their ethics may be. Parents always teach their kids something, sometimes through words, sometimes through actions or lack of actions, as it may be. Yeah. But when somebody is later on, at some point, they're going to become an adult, they're going to be living on their own, they're not going to be living with their parents, and they don't always live the lifestyle that their parents would prefer. And that's just a fact that we all know. And so it has to become part of who you are as an adult. If you're only doing it because of what your mom or dad thinks, or what your church community is going to think, or what you were taught in school or whatever, it's not you, it's those other people. So there comes a time it has to be part of who you are essentially. And so, like, while I write books and do podcasts and stuff, and I talk about, my views, I have very strong opinions, of course, on all kinds of things. I have opinions on abortion, veganism, the LGBT community. Like, I have all kinds of topics, interesting things, especially video games. I could talk about video games all day,
Nice.
but that's the thing, is people can listen to someone, but nobody can actually force a view on someone. A person has to go through their own journey. You can't transfer knowledge. A person may say something, but that when they're saying that, it's from their years of experience. and you can't just transfer that to a child. So that child is going to make mistakes along the way as they live their life. They're going to do regrettable things. Yep. We're all going to do something at some point that we regret, and I feel like that's something that needs to be recognized. So it's like, of course you want to share your views with people, but at the same time, like, I guess I try to hold back just a little bit and not be pushy about it. You know, even though I'm very opinionated.
Yeah. So that might be an interesting subtopic. And by the way, let me know if it looks like there's a lag on my video, because if there is, I can fix that. But I was going to say, here's an interesting difference between us is I don't have very many strong opinions.
Oh, really?
I have, yeah. So like every once in a while, I'll take one of these, like, so there'll be like these websites that are meant to help you figure out who you're going to vote for in election year. And it'll be like, so it's like a very detailed quiz. What do you think about all of these issues? At least 15 of them. One of them is just like, there's dozens and dozens and dozens. And there's even like, not just like yes or no or whatever. It's like a lot of like nuance, like, 7 or 8 options that you can pick. And so I will go through that. And the idea is then after you're done, it can be like, all right, in this Senate race, this senator agrees with you 82% of the time. This one, only 20% of the time, whatever. You can kind of like, pick based on that. Now, I don't pick who I vote for purely on issues. I also care about character and competency too, as kind of coming from a David Frentz perspective. But having said that, it's a weird experience for me to take those quizzes because there are so many of these issues. I'm like, I haven't earned an opinion on that yet because I haven't done the work. I haven't researched it. So, for example, climate change. I have no idea what exactly is going on. I've got guesses. Based on the fact that most scientists seem to think that climate change is a thing. Strong benefit of the doubt for me kind of goes to them. And I really hope whoever's right about this wins. I hope whatever needs to happen happens. Like, it seems like at this point, it's like a lot of corporations that really need to change to make the biggest difference as far as climate change goes. So I really hope enough public pressure or whatever happens that then like things work out. But at the same time, I would not debate someone for or against climate change because like I haven't read enough. Like I don't know enough. I know how much I don't know. So it's like I'm like 95% sure that I'm right about abortion, but I'm not even 100% on that. I am, 90-ish% sure that some form of Christianity is true, but I hold that with a pretty open hand too, which freaks out some of the people who go to my church. Go ahead.
Yeah, good thing. So here's the thing, for example. I have a friend who tries to get me involved in activism, okay? She tries to get me involved in her causes, but I don't really go along with it because, for example, she thinks like the 5G wireless waves is going to kill us all and that kind of thing. And it's like, I'm like you, like, I don't know enough about this. I haven't done research on that. So no, Monique, I am not going to be calling some senator or whatever and telling them to stop whatever bill, like, because I haven't done the research. I don't know enough about it. And same with climate change. Like, I genuinely believe that, there's a climate change happening, but I never use the climate change issue as an excuse for why we should be vegan or why we should not pollute or why we should reduce energy usage, because we should be doing those things anyway for other reasons anyway, aside from climate change. So climate change is really a non-issue for me in that way. And another issue is like, say, circumcision. Like circumcision is another one of those weird things because yes, I was circumcised when I was a baby. Now, I haven't suffered any harm from it personally, yet I personally hold the view that, well, the baby can't consent to that. Right. You can't get consent. I honestly feel like don't do it. Like, my opinion is I wouldn't do that to a baby. They can decide to be circumcised later in their adult life if they want. I mean, we have painkillers and stuff anyway. If people want to be circumcised as an adult, it's not that big a deal. So I think we need to be careful with, decisions which are reversible compared to those that are not reversible. Because, if you do circumcise a baby, then they're going to be like, grow up and like, hey, I wish you hadn't circumcised. I mean, you can't give them their foreskin back if they want it, you know? So that's why that's my policy is, you know, don't do irreversible things to people without their consent.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been moving on that topic. It's just one of those places where like my mind has been changing from kind of one side to the other. And I think I'm basically landing on the same side that you are.
Yeah.
But it took me some time. It's such a cultural thing. And and I think I was distracted. I was probably distracted by bad arguments too. And this can happen in the abortion debate. Like when pro-lifers make crappy arguments, it's distracting to pro-choice people. It's like, well, then I guess there's no good arguments against abortion, like the Beethoven argument. Think of all the Beethovens we've murdered. It's like, that's a stupid argument. There's also a lot of rapists who've been aborted too. And your value is not based on what you do for society, but based on the kind of thing you are. Anyway, so
yeah, I know. And another thing that's absolutely hilarious is you see, you know, because of course I grew up being taught Christianity. I was among that kind of influence a lot. Yeah. And here's the strange thing about me is that, like, of course I don't like abortion, of course, but then I was so surprised when I saw pro-life organizations supposedly then having whole big articles about how bad homosexuality is and being a sin and an abomination. I'm like, well, I like gay people because they have fewer abortions than the straight people. You know, so that was my mindset. It's like, yeah, like let's just let people get gay married or whatever sexuality they have or gender. That was my view, because think about it. Like like for me, this is a whack thing. Like I'm gonna get so much hate for this, but the most pro-life thing that someone can do is just, you know, support gay and transgender rights and all that stuff, because the more you let people do that, the less often they're getting straight married and having straight sex, and so you're reducing pregnancy, especially if you let transgender people have their surgeries that end up sterilizing them, you know. And so it's like you can be like secretly pro-life in a sense. It's like where you are. You may not even agree with, you know, transgender ideology, whatever the hell that is, or the gay agenda.
Right.
But you may support them anyway, because the more you support them, then the more abortion is reduced. Whereas otherwise, the way it used to be, at least, is, you know, and maybe still in some places, is that you have gay people who are forced into acting like they're straight and getting straight married, and they end up having kids with someone, and then they start realizing, wait, this isn't me. I'm gay. I don't want to be married to this person of the opposite sex, and so it results in heartbreak. So I feel like they should just be allowed to do what they want from the start, because it avoids so much trouble later on. It results in divorce and trauma to the kids and weird stuff like that. And so I'm a big fan of the LGBTQIA, whatever letters there are. They are confusing. Like I'm sure you know this, and most people would agree. Like, you know, the whole LGBT stuff and the gay and the transgender stuff is complicated. It is complicated, and as it should be, because the reality is that it's complicated.
People are complicated.
Yeah, but society had this idea that, oh, you know, there's only male and female, there's only men and women, and they have sex with each other.
Ironically, that's also coming back from those good old days, you know, conservative views of sexuality. To be fair, I mean, like biblically speaking, Christians
it was not the good old days as far as that topic goes. That's the thing, you know. And so I don't agree with the way things used to be as that, or racial equality, because you know, black people are treated much worse when you go further back you go. Yeah. But yeah, obviously I don't agree with that part of it. But I think things are improving now, because now people are generally, like, you know, more accepting if you happen to not be straight or cisgender, you know. Right. And then my experience is unique too, because I'm transgender myself, and I have a unique perspective in all this, you know, because I'm very familiar with the struggles that transgender people go through, the gender dysphoria. I feel all that in my own life. And so it's different. It's very different. And then I see a weird thing happening where you have all kinds of transgender people. Some of them even wish that they could have biological children, but they can't. That, you know, and or gay people too. Like, there are gay people who want to be parents, but because their relationship is gay, they can't reproduce, and they're even denied the ability to adopt, because you have the adoption agencies that are run by Christians who don't like them. You know what I mean? So there's the discrimination there. And it's like, man, if only all of the gay and transgender people who want to adopt were allowed to do so, well, a lot more children would be adopted. They'd be giving loving homes. And so, in a sense, my thing is that, yeah, the more accepting people are of treating LGBT people as equals, then the more everyone benefits in the long run. That's just sort of my opinion based on what I've seen.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you've brought us into two of the topics that I'm pretty open-minded on, that I haven't really landed on, which is not something that I think a lot of people that follow me would expect. I think people expect, you know, especially a white male Christian pro-life leader would have very strong opinions about all of the things that conservative people are supposed to believe. Although, you know, I feel like I think slowly I am believing fewer of the things that I'm supposed to believe if I'm a conservative. But it's been a pretty crazy couple of years within the conservative movement, so I'm processing all of that.
Yeah, see, that's what's great about you, Josh. You're open-minded, but not so open-minded that your brains fall out.
Oh my gosh, I hate that phrase so much.
I've heard it so many times.
Thrown at me so many times. There's a funny story. So I did this podcast on Life Report. It's actually my favorite Life Report episode that we ever did was about open-mindedness, and Life News posted it, and just like, you know, nothing. I don't want to seem like I'm attacking Life News. I really like the guy who runs Life News. He and I are friendly. But his audience is very different from my audience, let's just say. And so he posted our "Should Pro-Lifers Be Open-Minded About Abortion" episode. He didn't even change the title. And there were 150 comments under it on Facebook, only 2 of which were positive. And there were 4 people using that same, it's like, I think it's an Eisenhower quote or something like that. "Don't be so open-minded, your brains fall out." And I'm just like ripping my hair out. Like, no, obviously that's not what open-mindedness means. It doesn't mean being wishy-washy. It means being, I am open to possible I'm wrong about basically everything, except for 2 + 2 is 4, my own existence, like some really, really basic stuff, racism being wrong, you know, like things like that. But I'm open-minded about abortion, Christianity. So yeah, I see really strong arguments on kind of both sides of the topics that you're in right now. One of the things that's tricky is, you know, I feel so much sympathy for my friends who are in the LGBT movement. I've had friends in the LGBT movement for a long time, and I don't want that to come across like I've got these token friends. Like, I don't mean it that way. It's just like some of my closest friends are in that community, and I love them so much, and I feel so much hatred when they are bullied, when people treat them as less than. As less than human or less important than Christians or white people or whatever, you know? And so I have that part going for me, which means that at an emotional level, I am just naturally going to lean towards what will help make people like you happier. Because when I think, you know, like Chastity earlier, when you just said, I'm a transgender person, my emotional reaction is one of just kind of love and sympathy for you, because I don't know everything about your story, but I know there are parts of your story that are painful. That is, this cannot have been an easy road for you. And I cannot understand. I don't have the experiential knowledge here, right? I've had in this area a very remarkably easy life, and a privileged one. So I don't get it, but I hate that you've gone through pain and suffering and people mistreating you and discriminating against you. So on one side, that's like where I am emotionally. But then at this point, I'm still a Christian. So that means that I'm stuck with certain beliefs that are like, I are basically, I'd have to become a heretic or super heterodox to just be like, I accept that there's more than two genders. And so it's like I'm kind of stuck with that, I think, unless I stop becoming a Christian, or if like I become, or maybe if I believe the Bible is like not inerrant, maybe it's just like there's like some errors, some problems like written in it or whatever. But it's not going to make me stop loving transgender people and caring about them and wanting the best for them in any way that's not going to like violate my views. So that's kind of, so I live with this tension, and it's hard to live with that tension. It would just be much easier to be like all one or all the other. And I'm sort of stuck with this kind of place in the middle, and I care about you.
Yeah, well, that's the thing about it is that, well, yeah, I guess you could always ask, what would Jesus do? You know, you can always go that route. And, you know, of course, the golden rule is still like the ultimate principle. It totally is.
Yeah.
And it's special because it's not unique to Christianity. But, you know, I do feel like somebody can't call themselves a Christian if they don't follow the golden rule, because Jesus was big on that, you know, in the story in the Bible. So it's kind of a strange thing. And, you know, my story is interesting. See, I actually have published so many books. It's crazy. My first book I ever wrote was called Confessions of a Confused Virgin.
Oh,
it's hilarious. Title. My mom laughs so hard. But now I have this new series that's called Chandler's Honesty. And it basically tells the story of the past few years of my evolution from being, you know, Chandler Klebs, you know, my birth name, and the self-harm and self-hatred and what I was taught, you know, in Christianity that I couldn't believe. It's basically like an autobiography, but it's in conversation form where I'm talking to a unicorn in a dream. You know, and so my whole story is already available for the whole world to read, you know. So that's nice, but everybody has a whole different story. And
there's something that I love about you being so open about that stuff, because I think it helps other people who are still like struggling with these things to have other people be open. I've never said this publicly, but I have had a self-harm issue too before that I've struggled with. And something that I'm occasionally tempted to do even to this day. Like that is a part of who I am. I've been really, really open about being in therapy. I've been in therapy for 4 years now, I think 3 or 4 years, regularly. And that has been such a good thing for me. But that has been such a, like, you know, back in the day, it was like seen as like, there's something wrong with you if you're seeing a shrink, you know, like that kind of thing. And it's like, no, I want to destigmatize that. Even if people look like they're all put together because they're publishing books or they have a YouTube channel or like whatever, like, no, we all struggle with different things. We all have different stories, but we all struggle. It's not just people who don't have platforms that are struggling. And I think the more that we can be open about those scary topics, I think the better, you know, obviously there's ways to do it that would not be healthy, but, you know, I'm just kind of obviously outside of that. I think it's just really admirable that you are as open as you are about really, really painful stuff.
Yeah, well, that's the thing about it is most people hide those painful parts of their lives.
Right.
You know, they don't
talk about it.
It doesn't work
on Instagram.
Yeah, you know, it's weird. And, you know, I've actually come under criticism from some people, especially a certain friend, you know, because I am so open about things.
Yeah.
You know, and like, for example, I'm a little bit famous for talking about my testicles in several videos because I had my testicles removed. It's kind of like a recurring theme now. It's like my defining characteristic of the YouTube.
It's a significant event in your life. Yeah.
Well, yeah, because I was in pain for like 2 years. Like if you've ever been kicked in the balls, it felt like that, but 24/7.
Oh God, that's horrible. It
was painful.
Sorry.
It was so painful, and I was going to doctor after doctor trying to see, like, can I get these removed? Can I get my testicles removed because they're hurting so bad, and I'm not going to use them. And I had to go through such a fight for a few years before I finally found a urologist that was just willing to do it for me. And I came in there with evidence that this was right for me. I had a letter from a psychologist referring me for surgery. Yeah. I had my book I published called The Vow of Chastity that has like 13 reasons why I'm never going to have sex.
You clearly
I came in there with all my evidence to convince this guy. But he was such a nice guy. He was like, cool, and he didn't even make me show him all that stuff. But yeah, that's the thing about it. And so like my experience is disturbing, especially when you consider, the cutting and trying to chop off my own genitals myself and bleeding and hurting very badly. That's all in my books, and most people don't talk about these things.
Yeah.
But
they might not know what to say. Like, what do you say? That's so sad and horrifying. It's like, I'm glad you're okay. It's like, I think a lot of people they get uncomfortable. They don't know.
Yeah,
this is not what people talk about. They say,
they are uncomfortable.
Every Sunday morning, it's like, how are you doing? And there's an expected answer. Fine. I'm fine. I love the stand-up comedian. I forget which one. I love stand-up comedy, but some comedian said, fine is always a lie.
It is a lie. It is such a lie.
Know how to handle those
I know. Yeah, it's kind of weird because, okay, this is part of the reason I had to quit going to church, okay? I got so sick of people asking me how I am, and so I became sort of antisocial for a long time because, yeah, fine is a lie. Like, I can't say fine because I'm not. And so, but at the same time, people don't really want to stay and listen to all my struggles and stuff like that.
Like, what do you do with that? So I struggled with this for a really long time. I've been talking a lot about this with my closer friends the last couple of months because up until, this is about to get really real, up until about 3 months ago, I was not a super happy person. Like I've got a lot of good things going for me. A lot of people like what we do at ERI. I feel very fulfilled in that I can work full time doing the work that I love. I've got a wonderful marriage. I've got a family. I'm grateful for those things, but there are a lot of hard things going on too. And I hated it when like my closer friends would ask how I'm doing because I didn't want to be Debbie Downer. Like the SNL.
Oh, I know Debbie Downer from Saturday Night Live.
Like I felt like that if I didn't say fine. But I knew I wasn't fine. I was okay. I wasn't like horribly depressed always, but like sometimes I was, and I didn't want to say that. But it's like it felt if you're close enough with someone, it's also like feels immoral to lie to them too. Like they do care. It's kind of figuring out who is in that like inner circle that I should be real with, and how real, and that's like a degreed property. And now it's been nice. The last 3 months I've been way happier. I'm happier now than I've been probably my entire life. Because of some major changes in my life. But like that's been a long time coming. Neo Skeptic, by the way, wants to know if I'm vegan. I am not vegan yet, but I might end up vegan because I get there. Okay, so I have a lot of common ground with people who care about animal rights. I am not one of those people that's like, screw the animals. The Bible says they were put on earth for us. We can do like whatever the heck we want with them. Who cares? Like, no. So like The Cove, one of the best documentaries I've ever seen. One of the only documentaries I've watched twice. It was so good. This is about the annual dolphin slaughter in Japan, and this cove in Japan. It's a fascinating documentary. Blackfish. I know Blackfish is a pretty controversial documentary about the killer whales in SeaWorld, but I think there are some at least very interesting points made there. So I found those persuasive. I'm not going to say I agree with every single thing said in the documentaries because it's really easy to anthropomorphize dolphins and killer whales too, so that can get confusing. But like I do, like, for example, here's the thing I do have comments. Like I do believe it is true that dolphins in that cove in Japan have the cognitive ability to understand that they are being hunted, that there are hundreds of dolphins in a cove being speared to death on this one day. And that they have the ability to see their family member getting speared to death and know it's their family member and have emotions about that. Like that is morally relevant, even if I don't think they are equal with human beings. And so, factory farms, I think pretty clearly there is immoral stuff going on in factory farms in America. And so I struggle with that. Having said that, I also have this weird thing that almost no one has heard of unless they have like autistic kids, because autistic kids often have them. This
I
thing
happen to be
called
autistic, by the way.
Oh, so you might know. Okay, so cool. And so my wife's autistic. 2 out of 3 of my kids are autistic. Love autistic people. I have sensory processing disorder, which means that my brain processes certain sensations differently than a neurotypical brain. I'm not autistic, but I have SPD. And so an SPD can present differently for different people. For example, my son William, for a while, was very, very sensitive to heat and not sensitive to cold. He could go play naked in the snow and be perfectly happy, but his hot chocolate he would have in the morning is like barely lukewarm, but he perceived it as hot chocolate. It's just like this interesting thing. His brain was just wired a little bit differently. SPD for me, mainly, and this is pretty common SPD thing, means I have a very, very, very strong gag reflex. And I am very, very sensitive to certain kinds of texture. So I cannot swallow the smallest of pills. It is horrible when I've got to take medication because I've got to basically take like children's acetaminophen. It's all liquid stuff or BC powder, like stuff that you can stir in like orange juice or whatever. Or now we've kind of figured out that we can like, put like the insides of pills in like one of those like cupcake things. It doesn't really totally it tastes pretty gross, but like it's enough that I can get it down. But I'm also like, I cannot eat any pasta. Like anything like that texture, like that chewy texture, most vegetables I can't have. There's a lot of, I'm fairly limited. And I used to just think I was picky and weird. And now I understand what SPD is and I feel less terrible about myself, but still it's very annoying. So I don't know if I could survive a vegan diet is a problem. And so I live in this tension of, I am sad and about what is like the reality for a lot of the animals that have died that I'm eating. And I, at a moral level, I would like to be vegan. And I'm basically convinced that even if animals are not people, that it really matters how we treat them. Is it meat chewy too? It's just a different kind of chewy. It's not the same as lasagna. Like for my brain, I don't know. I don't know if it's childhood stuff or just my brain. I don't know. It's just it is.
Yeah,
it is what it is. So yeah,
very interesting. Like I have some sensory issues too. So for example, I have extremely good hearing, like crazy good hearing.
Oh, nice.
So that can be a benefit, but it can also be problematic, especially now living with
behind your back.
Yeah, won't go into.
I don't want that.
Yeah,
I know enough about what people think about me who don't like me.
Yeah, I know that's the thing. But yeah, the thing is, and then touch. Like I don't like being touched. I really don't like being touched. I don't like shaking hands. I don't like people hugging me. All that kind of crazy stuff.
COVID's worked out for you then.
Yeah, like
I don't know. Is shaking hands going to come back? I don't even know.
Yeah, and it's really a no-brainer too, because like it all makes sense. I don't even want to shake someone's hand, so of course I'm going to be a virgin when I'm 34 years old. I won't even shake someone's hand or hug them unless they're a really, really close friend and we're having a special moment. Sure. So of course I can't go with sex because there'd be too much touching. So that's another issue that goes on. And so and then with foods, I'm one of those weird kids like where I don't like my foods mixed. I like to eat things separate unless it involves ketchup. Like I'll put ketchup on pasta. I put ketchup on tofu. I put ketchup on pizza. Like I put ketchup on everything. Ketchup is good. But yeah, like a lot of things, like my mom will try to mix certain vegetables together or certain fruits together. It's like, no, I don't. No, I don't. I want them all separate. I need to know what I'm tasting.
I agree with that one.
Together, my body can't handle it.
I agree with that one.
Oh, I know. But yeah, it is very interesting. And the one thing that's kind of nice about the vegan, but there's so many different vegan diets. That's the thing that's so great about it, is that they're like in a way. Just being someone who eats more variety is already being closer to being vegan, because the standard American diet, the standard American diet, like people live entirely off of cheeseburgers and fries, and they're very unhealthy for it. And so getting children or even adults to even eat their veggies is a real challenge, you know? And so, and this is one of the things is when people think about veganism, because they're used to that diet, they think, well, what do you eat? And I have people say to me all the time, well, what do you eat? Because all they eat is meat, some of these people. And I'm like, have these people never eaten fruits and vegetables? And aside from that, you know, of course, now I'm lucky because I like tofu. I'm like nuts, and tofu is like the cheapest meat substitute, as it's called, you know. But man, me and my roommate, who's also vegan.
I'm hoping that works
my roommate's also vegan. Like we could talk about food all day long. We love food.
That's probably going to be the way to get me to be vegan. If they come up with substitutes that are good enough to trick my brain, I'm there. Like the cost issue might not be super helpful because it's not like you make a ton of money in the pro-life world or whatever. But I'm open. But I'm also like super skeptical when I'm like already seeing like the Impossible Burger ads. It's like,
yeah,
really? I don't know.
Yeah,
maybe I should try it sometime.
You want to know something strange? Is that I'm not a fan of these new vegan burgers. Like, and see, here's the thing: is a lot of vegans are more the type who are going to be eating different types of foods anyway. We're going to be eating our fruits and vegetables. We're probably going to be using different stuff. So then, when I come across some of these modern vegan burgers, some of them they're not good, and I can't.
They're still working on it, right? Like they're still working on this technology.
Yeah, they're still working
on
these things, and the thing is, I can't handle them because they look and crunch a little bit too much like meat. I can't handle it.
Oh, like, interesting. It's too good of a substitute for you.
Right. The thing is, they do that. The reason they have these new vegan burgers, I'll tell you the secret. Okay, I'm going to get the secret.
I want to know.
The reason they do this is so that people can feed their meat-eating family and friends burgers, and they won't even know it's vegan because the texture and the taste is going to be so spot on.
Does that work though? Is it good enough?
Yeah, some of them these days are good enough to fool people. Wow. You know, but because they are good enough to fool those people, they do. we have a comment for the new vegan burger.
Okay, I want to know which ones. If I'm going to try a vegan burger, tell me the one because I need the opposite of you. I want the closest to a substitute to what I'm used to. So, what is the best vegan burger substitute? Where should I be going?
Well, there's definitely a few that come to mind. For example, there's Beyond Meat, which I've had once, and that was pretty good. And also of course, like there's the Awesome Burger at the Hy-Vee Market Grill, but that's kind of only in a Midwestern thing because you're still in California, right?
No, I'm actually in Charlotte. We moved from California to Charlotte, North Carolina in 2016.
North Carolina. Oh, yeah. Cool. Yeah. But see, that's the thing is like,
might take longer for North Carolina to have the options that California has, I'll just say.
Yeah. But that's the thing is there's so many good ones to try, you know, because if you go to like the health food section, you know, a health food store or a health food section in a grocery store, there's so many different kinds I've tried. For example, I like the Boca burgers because they're cheap, you know, the ones that are all vegan, they're like the cheapest of the veggie burgers. And especially like, for example, like the ones that they change the names of, like they'll do chicken, but it won't be the full word. It'll be like chick and then an apostrophe and like they do weird stuff like that. But I like that because it has the breading. It has like the breading over it. You know, like a fish stick. You know, like how fish stick has the breading over it, and you're really tasting that. Well, they have vegan fish sticks. They've got vegan corn dogs and vegan hot dogs and all kinds of vegan burgers. You know, and the ones that are my favorite, of course, tend to be the ones that you can tell, but that it's not vegan. Those are my favorites. But some of these ones that you know are just so good. Like I forget all of them, but there's a lot of new ones. So, you know, you kind of gotta try them out and see if you like them. But some of them are going to appeal more to people who want something that's like the meat they're used to. Whereas others like me who have been vegan for so long, I can't even stand, the thought of something that's too similar because it brings back bad memories.
Yeah. No,
You know?
I totally get that.
Yeah, another thing that's interesting is the vegan cheeses. Like they have these new vegan cheeses. There's
Oh,
Dia, there's
Jesus.
Foley.
I thought he said Jesus.
Vegan cheeses, yeah.
Like, what is this? Okay, cheese. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Oh man, but yeah. So yeah, they have like for example, there's Sarpino's in Independence where I live. There's a place called Sarpino's, a pizza place, and so you can order vegan pizzas. You can get on the website. That's why they have a whole vegan menu, and like they have like the Dia cheese. It's kind of one of the famous brands. Some people don't like it, but it doesn't look exactly or taste exactly like real cheese.
Yeah.
And that's to me, I like that fact that it doesn't. But as me and my roommate will say, it tastes a lot better than we remember cheese tasting.
Interesting. Interesting.
And like when before I went vegan, I was like 202 pounds. Like I was really dang fat, and then I just sort of lost weight and got better looking after going vegan. That brings me to another thing though, is I really get tired of this whole thing about promoting veganism just to look sexier. I mean, it does help. I won't lie. It does help. People end up getting better looking sometimes after they've been vegan for a few years, and I have some good looking friends to prove it too.
Uh-huh.
But what's cool is there's different reasons. They're like my documentaries that I recommend tend to be like Speciesism the movie was a really good one. I like that one, and then there was what the health, which was about the health aspects and the health benefits. There may be a little bit of misinformation in the video, but it's still generally very good. And then there's the Game Changers. You've probably heard of the Game Changers, haven't you? That documentary?
I don't think I have.
Man, yeah, it's good. It's called The Game Changers, and it has all these vegan bodybuilders and stuff. Like there are bodybuilders and athletes that are vegan. And so it's basically sort of getting rid of the stereotype that vegans are just weak and that's crazy. There's some really strong athletes that have an all plant-based diet, and what I find is so strange is that people don't realize, and I figured this out years ago before it was even explained to me. So people think that you need meat to get protein, but where does the protein come from in, say, like beef? The cows eat grass. The protein in their bodies came from the grass that they ate. You can always trace it back to a plant, And I'm not saying that humans should all just eat grass because it cuts your tongue. It does. I know from experience. But the fact is, there's always a plant somewhere where things come from. Like for example, people promote like fish oil to get omega-3s. Well, no, you can get it from the seaweed and the algae the fish are eating in the ocean. It just comes from the plants. There's always a plant source for any nutrient that people might derive from meat, So I mean, so there's various aspects of health and ethics. It's vast. I like it because it's vast. In fact, the reason I like veganism is the same reason I like the transgender topic and I like the abortion topic, because they are vast. They are complicated. There's so many aspects to consider. And if it was all simple, it wouldn't be very exciting now, would it? Right. You know what I'm saying? It's the controversial topics, the ones that you have mixed feelings about, that I feel are the most interesting. And I have mixed feelings about all kinds of things, But this may surprise you, bringing it back to the abortion topic, though. It may surprise you that I feel like I'm open-minded on the topic of whether abortion should be legal or illegal. Like I'm open-minded on that topic because I'm like 100% on the immoral. But I feel like whether something should be legal or illegal is a whole different matter, because then people want to ask you, and they I'm sure people have tried to trap you this way. They try to go to pro-life activists and like, well, if you know what I'm about to say, don't you? If abortion is made illegal, how should the woman be punished? Right. That's what they do. And I'm one of those people that says no punishment. That you punish the man who got her pregnant, make him pay child support, or if there is an abortion, if abortion stays legal, make him pay for the abortion, not the taxpayers. You know, so
wait, if it's illegal, have the guy pay
if
for it?
Abortion stays legal,
like
if abortion stays legal, the men who get the women pregnant should be forced to pay.
The hard thing there is like they would rather pay for the abortion than child support for 18 years. Like I'd rather them still have to do that, but
yeah, I know. But the thing is, what we have is a situation where, as I'm sure you know, how often our tax dollars are going to fund abortion clinics. Because after abortion became legal, well, then it started becoming a thing where, abortion lobbyists, they can start campaigning, and then Planned Parenthood, received so many tax dollars and stuff. And so the problem with this is it's forcing people who are not having the sex to cause these pregnancies and forcing them to pay for it.
So, what's interesting? I'm going to say something that's like, this is going to tick off a lot of pro-life people. Like, this is not a part of the discussion that's ever been that interesting to me. Because yes, because you're right. You are in some very, very separated way participating in abortion if it's paid by taxpayers. But like at the same time, like I feel like the other side is a pretty good response to that. It's like, yeah, but like a lot of us are against war, and how much way more of our tax dollars go towards paying for wars overseas that we're against.
It's equally wrong.
Yeah, I don't equally wrong is that might be an interesting debate, but certainly some wars are very, very problematic. But it's kind of like, it's sort of like the tax dollars are sometimes going to go to things that you don't like. Like the harder thing for me, or the reason I'm more opposed to it, is because so take Oregon. In Oregon, basically abortions are all covered by tax dollars, which makes it a lot harder to convince someone not to have an abortion. Like if you're doing sidewalk counseling, we just did a couple of sidewalk counseling seminars in Oregon, and one of the, it's not the only part of our approach, but certainly a thing that we often do in certain states will be to try to encourage them, go to a pregnancy resource center. They got some free stuff for you, including ultrasound and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, in Oregon, it's like, yeah, I can get all of that for free. Like, it's like, it's harder to kind of convince them, maybe go to a different direction. So that's the part that I've cared more about. It's not as much that I've got this complicit connection to it. It's more like, I don't want anything that is going to be more encouraging to someone to just take this kind of easy way out or something like that.
Well, yeah. See, and that's also, yeah. So on one hand, there's how I feel about being forced as a celibate person to pay for other people's abortions, so there's that aspect, but there is more to it than just that. Because if, people's decisions, they have to pay for the consequences of their own mistakes or whatever, then it sort of discourages that type of behavior. You know what I mean? Like, for example, drinking and driving, people know that they will probably go to jail and lose their license if they do it. So there is a deterrence aspect. This gets complicated because once you start getting the legal and, what should be illegal, what should people have to pay fines or go to jail for? And I tend to feel like if people know it's going to cost them money for the things they do, they're going to be a little bit less likely to do it. So somebody who has to pay for their own abortion is going to be less likely to just be irresponsible than somebody who gets it for free.
That makes sense on one level, but even still, it's sort of like there's a sunk cost issue for them at this point. They're either going to pay $400, or if we're talking about an illegal abortion, probably a lot more, probably several thousand, but they're going to pay some amount of money for an abortion, or pay how many tens of thousands of dollars over the course of 18 years to care for the child. That's a very expensive commitment. So it's kind of there's no free way out of it at that point if it's not covered by tax dollars. So I guess I just imagine that the financial aspect is not the primary motivator either direction.
Mhm.
But when it comes to like when I think about like what should be legal and what should not be, like I lean libertarian in the sense of I think there should be fewer laws. I like this thing that I heard Dennis Prager say one time. I don't agree with everything Dennis Prager says or believes, but I like this one thing that he said, where he said there's it's not ideal for you to be in a country where there are so many laws that you could actually break one and not even know it. It's just because like
Yeah,
there's so
agreed.
many. We should like simplify things. I agree with that. And so there should be fewer laws. There's a lot of things that are illegal that I basically think like ought to be legal, even if they are harmful to people.
Right.
But even a lot of my pretty hardcore libertarian friends would agree that at least a few things ought to be illegal. Like, there's not that many people that are like, there should be zero laws. There ought to be like at least a few laws. What are the types of things that we ought to have illegal? Well, the things where innocent, vulnerable people are being significantly hurt. So murder should be illegal. Rape should be illegal. Physical assault should be illegal. Libertarians will tend to add some kind of theft one because they care a lot about the property rights too. So we can add theft to the list, and at least those four, right?
Yeah.
Is good, and that makes sense to me. And so then it becomes a question of is the unborn a human person like you and me, or is it a potential person? Is it going to be something that becomes valuable later, but not yet? And so there's kind of this window when we can kind of take it out of existence and it's not going to be a problem. But if it's a person from the beginning, like I think it is, then that's one of those things. Even though I think some other things should be legal, it becomes one of those things where it's like, this should be one of those few things that ought to be against the law because it's literally killing an innocent person.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting because, yeah, of course, since I see abortion as murder, of course, if you accept the premise that murder should be illegal, then it feels like it logically follows the same in the case of abortion too. And
I don't use the word
another.
murder, just as an FYI. Because the word murder means something actually even more specific than killing. Like legally speaking, for something to be murder, it needs to be a human being killing another human being. So right then, you're begging the question on the humanity of the unborn. But also, it's got to be illegal. It's got to be an illegal killing. So as long as abortion is legal, it's actually technically not murder. You could call it killing, or even homicide. Technically, which is just a weird thing to call something that's legal. But it's not murder.
That's a tricky one because what they've done is you've probably seen the movie The Giver.
Yes, that's an better book. One of my favorite books as a kid.
Yeah, well, in that the guy says they didn't eliminate murder; they called it by another name.
Yeah,
I feel like that's what people are doing. Is like, let's just not call it murder. Let's legalize it so it's no longer murder.
Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. But as for the response about how it's a human killing another human, well, I say that definition is wrong. It was humans that wrote the dictionary, and so they came up with a definition that's only human killing another human. But the thing is, whether it's called murder or whether it's simply called killing, I still view the killing like I do view the killing of some other innocent animal the same as I do killing the unborn, for example, or anybody else. Like that's the thing. So I still, in my mind, there is a difference between killing and murder. But here's like, let's say you're out driving and you're just out driving. You're not doing anything. You're just on your way to work, whatever, and you run over a squirrel. Now,
I've literally done
know that the squirrel was going to run into the road.
I've done this. Like, it's an accident, but I did kill a squirrel.
I know. It happens to everyone because, these squirrels and the deer sometimes are just not very smart.
Right.
But, it was not your intention to murder that squirrel. So
that's
it's not
the other
murder.
thing I was about to bring in. That's exactly where I was going to go, Chastity, is because part of the problem with the word murder is that it implies a level of intent that is just not there for most women that have abortions. This is like one of the easy miscommunications that can happen between pro-life and pro-choice people. It's like, we'll do this thing that we call trot at a toddler. If they say, if they're like focused on the woman's circumstances, then they probably like, what about she's in college? She needs to be able to finish her schooling. Okay, there's probably a hidden premise in their argument that the unborn is not a person, because they would never be like, if she's got to kill her toddler to finish school, she should be able to kill her toddler. We wouldn't say that. So there's a hidden premise. Let's draw out that premise by just kind of saying that. Like, would Do you think that she should be allowed to kill a toddler in that situation? We've got a longer, more relational way of doing that, but that's functionally what's happening in the argument. And when we do that, though, for some pro-choice people, they're like, wait a minute, you're like, what they think is that you're saying that women who have abortions are just like women who would kill their own toddlers. Like a mother who in her right mind strangles her, baby or drowns a baby in a bathtub. And I just don't think that they're parallel, because when we think about moral culpability, like how blameworthy you are for something wrong that you do, like the main things that we think about are intent and knowledge. Like, what did you know? What should you have been expected to know? It's like there's an epistemological question there. And I think a woman who drowns her toddler has intent to kill her toddler and knows that this is a person, knows that this is a baby. Whereas a lot of women having abortions are not intended to kill anyone. They're intended to become not pregnant. They're intending to get out of a crisis. They feel like that the building's on fire. They're just trying to get the house to not be on fire. And they don't have knowledge that this is a person. They've been probably told by maybe everyone in their life, their parents, their school, their teachers, their professors, their friends, whatever, the internet, Planned Parenthood, whoever, that this is not a baby yet. It's a clump of cells. It'll become a baby later if you let it, but right now it's fine. And so then it's different. And so when we call abortion murder, I feel like it kind of goes back to like making it seem like women who have abortions are like murderers. And I just think it's really different in this situation.
Well, you know what? I'm glad you brought that up. I'm very glad you brought that up. And here's why. Okay, so like, for example, the message, meat is murder, for example, that, killing animals is murder. And I face this every day as a vegan, Yeah. So the thing is, people, when they buy a cheeseburger at Burger King or whatever, they are just thinking they're buying food. They're not seeing the cause and effect that by buying that animals actually have to be killed in order for that burger to be produced. So in that sense, because there's not intent for them to kill, they're not a murderer because they're not intending to kill the animal. Yeah. And so what ends up happening is things change, though, after there's an awareness, because then after you understand the cause effect, you have a revelation. You are aware, like, wait, me buying this meat means that they have to kill the animal in order to put this meat on my plate. Right. So once you have an awareness and then you continue to contribute to that and do that, then you are a murderer because you have the knowledge of good and evil then, so to speak.
Yeah, this is why I feel so complicated, because I am culpable. I do have the knowledge that factory farms are a thing and grizzly, and I don't like that. And I mean, I don't have the intent to kill them. I definitely have the intent to eat when I need to eat. But certainly, I'm more culpable for the fact that I'm still eating meat than the like completely uninformed person. It's the sensory processing disorder as the issue mainly. There's financial issues too, but mainly is kind of what's still kind of the deciding factor there. But I'm willing to admit. But I'm potentially very culpable for, the meat that I eat.
So like, okay, now this is my approach. Okay, so Josh, so now you have the awareness. So maybe by my definition that I could say that you are a murderer, right? But I love you anyway. And
I love you too, Chastity.
Yeah. See, here's the deal. Look, okay, so look. You're a murderer because you're doing when you do something will contribute to killing like that. But I still love you and I respect you as an individual and your opinions and your life and your experience. And I'm simply here as a friend to help point you in what I believe is the right direction.
Totally fair. Totally
to
fair.
Support you, And so that's the thing about it. That's my attitude, and that is the pro-life way, Josh. That's the way to do things. Yeah. It's the way to treat people, is not like, oh, you're bad because you did this thing and you go to hell, Right. But that's not the way to treat people. Yeah. And okay, first of all, because it's not very effective and it turns people off when you just get mean to about it.
Really does.
And I have to say that a lot of people, even my best vegan friends, they took them some convincing. There's a process, there's a journey for a lot of people. And so people get more and more enlightened awareness. And it's one of those things you have to wrestle with.
Yeah.
Like I think we all have to wrestle with these sort of things, like where there's a time when you don't know anything, you don't realize that what you're doing has consequences, and then there's a time you become aware. It's like, well, I know maybe it's not the best thing that I'm doing this because this could potentially lead to that, but they have to wrestle within their mind. They have to go through the process.
Yeah.
They have to go through the process like, well, if I do this, am I a hypocrite, or do I value this life more than that life? Right. And they have to go through that sort of a struggle. And I got to tell you, I go through struggles myself too. Like, for example, I don't kill spiders. Like I'm weird. I don't kill spiders because that would be a violation of my pro-life and vegan ethics. Because if I know this sounds weird, Josh. I know this sounds weird, but I'm going to compare killing a spider to killing an unborn human in the womb.
I'm open to any argument. I am an open-minded person.
Okay. So here's the thing: is if I was to kill a spider because of the fact that it might bite me, or the fact that it might go and kill other bugs, which it probably will, which makes me very sad. I feel bad for those bugs when they eat by the
really
spider.
Damned if you do, damned if you don't situation.
Exactly, it's a catch-22.
You're saving the other victims by killing the spider.
It's a catch-22. Now here's the thing: is with abortion, it's very much the same thing, because if you let them live, there is a chance that they will be born, they'll grow up and live life, and there's a chance that they may become a horrible person and do horrible things to other humans or other animals. So there's that possibility. So the thing is, how does someone respond? Because I have to not be a hypocrite. Like, I have to think, well, if I kill the spider to prevent it from causing suffering to the other insects, well, then that same reason could be used to justify abortion, because then I'm preventing that being from going to harm others. Yeah. So I know it sounds weird, but here's the difference, Josh, and you'll love this. There is a difference between a human and a spider. There is a difference.
But go ahead. I'm interested in what your difference is.
Okay. The difference is you can try to educate and teach and talk a human into changing.
Right.
Where you can't do that with a spider.
No, you can't.
And that is why, like when we're talking about the value of life, I say we have intrinsic and extrinsic value. I'm not even sure if extrinsic is a word, but I think you know what I'm saying.
It is a word, but I think maybe you mean instrumental value. But go ahead and explain what you mean by those.
Okay. So here's what I mean is, so we have intrinsic value, you, me, a goat, a cow, or a spider, because we are living beings. We are living beings, experiencing things. We are sensing things. We're exploring the world around us. We have value in and of ourselves, intrinsic value.
Agreed.
However, there is also extrinsic value, or perhaps instrumental value, as you may call it, and that the power of humans, for example, to do things, whether good or evil, we have greater power than do other species. And that's the issue, is that while I will say that the intrinsic value of a human is the same as that of the spider or of a chicken or whatever, because they are valuable in and of themselves. And so of course I don't want to kill them, obviously, because I value their life. Right. But I also see that there is a difference between a human and a chicken or an insect or whatever, because and to tell you the truth, there are, those moral situations, those philosophical things like the trolley problem and all that. You know what I'm talking about, don't you?
Oh yeah.
Like there's a situation where like people like, oh, well, would if there was on one set of train tracks there was a chicken, and on the other set of train tracks there's a human, and you have the chance to switch which direction the train will go to either kill the human or to kill the chicken. And so then the thing that I need to know in that situation, first of all, this will never happen. Okay, this will never happen.
Experiment.
But the first thing I would want to know to be able to make that decision is the human vegan? Is the human
really?
vegan? That's a big deal, because if they are if they are not vegan, then maybe letting the train hit them to save more chickens might actually be a good thing. You know, and that's what's weird. Now, on the other hand, if they are an ethical vegan and you know this, you may actually save more chickens, ironically, by killing the chicken and letting the human live to save more chickens. You see?
Yeah. So I'm tracking with your logic. I disagree with your logic, but I'm tracking with your logic. And so not trying to change your mind, but just to like here's my cards on the table. Here's where we agree. Here's where we disagree. And I'll need to wrap up pretty soon. But so you're talking about intrinsic versus instrumental value. Extrinsic is a different thing. So there is a way where intrinsic and extrinsic get used. So here would be an example of that. So a human zygote has the intrinsic potential to grow and mature into a adult human, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas my skin cells only have an extrinsic potential to become a person. Like you could theoretically use kind of like from an outside force, do some things, do a cloning procedure, extracting the DNA out of my cell, injecting them into a human egg cell, adding a spark of electricity, and theoretically you could clone me. But it's not going to happen on its own. Whereas the human zygote doesn't need anything. It needs, just the proper environment and food, and it's just going to do its thing. So that's where like intrinsic and extrinsic comes in. But where you're talking about value the way that I do actually a lot more often, which is defining between intrinsic and instrumental value. So I have intrinsic value as a human being. My son, William, has also equal intrinsic value, I think, as a human being. Now, I differentiate between animals. I'll talk about that in a minute. But as an area where we're different, which is fine. But at least just talking about humans, I think William is equally valuable to me intrinsically. However, I have more instrumental value to Equal Rights Institute than William does, because I can speak and I can make videos and podcasts and like I can do these things that are helpful for ERI to do our mission. William is not nearly kind of that helpful. And so, so that's kind of the difference of value for us. I think that humans are more valuable than animals because like, I think like it morally matters that we can, that we have the intrinsic ability to think and act morally, which I think is like different, for example, than spiders, but people can kind of agree to disagree, about that. Anyway, I've got to wrap up pretty soon.
Right. But that all brings back to the central point. See, what I do like about humans is that I can have a conversation. I can talk with you because you're a human. That's the difference. And so in a sense, the people who are like, well, humans are not equal to other animals in value. Well, in a way, yes, but in a way, no, because yes, humans have more of the instrumental value because of the influence and the power that they wield. Yeah. But at the same time, we are equal to the others in another way. The intrinsic value, just being who we are, just the fact that we are a life ourselves. Yeah. And so I say both sides are right, but in different ways. And so as you can see, I just have a very balanced view of these kinds of things. And like I think to a certain sense, we all do have certain feelings where we are personally place certain lives as more valuable than others. Like obviously, you are going to value your wife and children more than just some stranger. Obviously, sure. You have a more emotional connection, so sure. Of course you personally value them. What I'm saying, so there's the subjective value. So subjectively to each person, some people have more valuable to them because of their role in their lives. But I feel like objectively, we're all of equal value in a sense, if you get what I'm saying.
Yeah. So no, I'm tracking with you.
Yeah, I feel like, we agree on a whole lot more than we disagree on. And I think you're just such a pleasure to talk to, Josh.
You are too. Thank you.
Yeah, I know. It's really cool. And so I've listened to so many podcasts with you, and I like the way you handle the abortion topic and other topics. And I think it's great, and I know you have to wrap it up, and I feel this has been very good. I'm so glad we did this. And maybe in the future, We can go into different topics. We could go into topics of, politics or religion or philosophy and trolley problems. Who knows, I mean, I would like to go like what you want to talk about. What you want to talk about, could be very interesting. You might present something I've never heard before, just as I'm sure in this talk I presented some interesting ideas you probably haven't heard from any other source.
And I appreciate having heard them. Thank you for that, and thank you for inviting me to be on your live stream. It's a real honor.
Yeah, I've wanted to have you for a long time, but now I actually have the technological means to do so, which is it's a beautiful feeling.
It is. It is. Well, it was great talking to you, Chastity. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you very much, Josh. We'll do this again sometime. Have a great day.
You too.